Welcome to the Inspired Intentions podcast with Skyterra Wellness. If you've been not taking care of yourself, it's time to reset habits and plunge into your new normal. Jeff and Rachel back here with you today, and we are very excited about this topic.
We are excited. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
I'm excited about this guest. He has a really great podcast voice.
He does. We totally just found that out unexpectedly.
Yeah. So
during our setup.
It's going to be a good episode.
Yeah.
Let's introduce him.
Let's go for it.
Yeah. So this is Michael Vess. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Rachel.
Welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, guys.
Michael is Skyterra's executive chef and culinary director. So we're really excited to have you here today, Michael.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a topic that really connects home with folks who are maybe getting back into cooking, those who just need some of those quick and simple tips. We probably need to go into Michael's bio a little bit more, though, huh?
Yeah. And I actually, before we do that, I have a really great story about Michael.
Oh, cool.
And I forgot to tell him I was going to say this, so this will be a surprise.
Perfect.
So I went to the kitchen yesterday and I wanted lunch and I was late because I was busy with something.
Did he get upset with you?
No, he didn't.
He never does.
No, he's so even-keeled.
So kind.
He's great. But I came and he had forgotten that I was coming, which was fine. And I don't think I gave him too much notice. And there was...
None of us have ever done that to him before. It's actually never happened.
Lunch had already been served and there was no lunch left. Mm-hmm. And I was, I'm like, that's okay. That's totally fine. Like I have a bar with me. I'll be fine. And he was like, no, just give me 5 minutes.
Whoa, 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
That's all?
Only 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So when I have 5 minutes at home, it could take me 5 minutes to just look through my fridge.
Yeah, exactly. 5 minutes.
5 minutes. So I sat out at the table and out came the most beautifully plated food. There was quinoa. Mm-hmm. There was salmon.
Grilled salmon.
Grilled salmon with a delicious sauce on it.
This sounds like a really nutrient-dense meal.
It was so nutrient-dense. And I'm not even done. There was a spinach, tomato, onion salad, which was delicious.
Wow.
And he made that from scratch in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I am sure we need to find out more on how he does something like that.
Yeah. So I think today, as we go into recipes and we start to talk about all of Michael's talents and his background, of course, I think what I want people to know is eating nutrient dense can be done really quickly, can be prepared quickly. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited for Michael to tell us how.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So the gist of yesterday's lunch and why I could do it so well is when I make a mess, I make it count. I always cook a little bit of extra of everything. So I had some quinoa that I just keep around for instances of emergency or if someone's hungry or if I need to.
Now, is quinoa easy to
quinoa is
keep
super
like
easy.
that?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah,
Nice.
super easy. Yeah, and just par cook it and cool it down well and throw it into a...
What's par cook?
Par cook is cooked just until it's exactly done, not overcooked with too much water. If anything, you'd want to use a little bit less water. So that's a little al dente. So it's just barely cooked all the way.
Nice.
Yeah. And then because it keeps it neutral where you can reheat it by adding more water. And then it can be a little softer at that point, and it's okay. It's not already so soft. So I had some of that on hand. I had some cucumbers and some really ripe tomatoes too, a little fresh lemon juice and olive oil. Saturates really quick. A little sea salt. Made an instant salad.
Boom.
Yeah, boom.
Just like that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, a little massaging of the spinach made it seem as though it had been marinating for a while.
Now, when chefs say massage, what does that exactly mean? I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, so massaging greens is something that's a really quick way to be able to make lunch in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. You take hearty greens, if it's kale, for example, and a little sea salt and olive oil. Mm-hmm. Usually I'll add an acid to it, a vinegar, like an apple cider or a rice wine vinegar. And with gloved hands, I usually just rub the oil and the salt and the vinegar in. I just kind of rub it in between my fingers until the color of the greens go to dark green, and I can tell that it's saturated.
You basically get one with the kale, is what I'm hearing.
One with the kale, absolutely. You hold it in your hands and then you're putting the love into it as you're about to put it onto the plate.
He describes it so simply, and I think it's like, man, when you think of those denser greens, those ones we know are so good for us, something simple like that probably will make most of us more likely to execute.
Especially if it only takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's another way to use your greens, because you can eat them raw, you can saute them, you can boil them, you can put them in a soup, of course, or you can massage them and have them nice and crisp and on hand, ready to roll anytime.
Boom. Man, we have come right out of the gates today.
Yeah, we didn't even get into Michael's background.
Hey, y'all.
Tell us about yourself, Michael.
So a little bit about me, I guess. I've been at Skyterra for a few years now and enjoying making these meals for the guests. So that's, I guess, the skinny in the last 2 years. But before then, I've worked with food that is important, that you feel good when you get up from the table. Has been my point of view, I'll say. And that came to me many years ago, and I've been cooking since I was 18. So for quite a while, that for me to be able to do what I'm doing, you have to get up and feel good from the table. So that was my selling point. And just so happens that healthy food and beautiful, colorful food, all of that goes hand in hand with feeling good. So it just, all these natural paths opened up and eventually led me to where we're sitting right now.
So you've always had that perspective that no matter what kind of food you're preparing for the people you're feeding, that you really ensure that when I get up from your table, or that individual gets up from the table, they're going to be feeling good. Could you share with our listeners maybe some of the types of restaurants that you've worked in the past? And I think it's always cool to hear about your story, how you're highly self-taught. And I think that's something for others to recognize, is that when you get to the level that Michael is, he's really put in the time to kind of learn these techniques and do them in a way that is potentially faster, but also in a way that works for him and the folks that he's trained under him.
Most definitely. So I've always worked in restaurants and with the finest chefs that I could imagine. People who I wanted to personify, or really knew that I would be getting paid to learn, in other words, by being beside them. So from fine dining of French and urban Indian and some Cajun, those in German actually as well. That was kind of my cornerstone beginning. That's what gave me a foundation to start. And then from there, I helped open many restaurants since then, and some were all very traditional restaurants. So the foundations of where the foods that I'm cooking have been most important to me. Not nouveau food, but the origins, how things were traditionally prepared has been my passion into following, preparing food for other guests. And I feel like that's where I can come from, a true, genuine state of being. And it just so happens that that's really healthy, and it's really beautiful, and it all just falls together. So yeah, that's kind of the skinny. A lot of Latin food I've done, a lot of Southern as well, which was an interesting delve into some really heavy foods while still trying to be healthy in there, and that was difficult.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about how you think about, the restaurants that you've worked in it's a pretty wide range of different types of cuisines. Do you use that experience as you're starting to think about the recipes? Bringing in different flavors. I'm just thinking back to the salmon I had yesterday, and that, I don't know what was in the sauce, but it was delicious. Yeah,
so that was miso and smoked shoyu were kind of the basis of that. And it was just reduced really quickly, and that's how I was able to cook, grill, and finish the salmon all together, and make kind of a sauce all at the same time. Make a little pan sauce, and it also makes a bit of a dressing too. So we're just winning all over the place with that plate. That was a really fun one. And what's really cool is when you just lean forward and follow your head, your body just kind of goes with it, and wonderful things can happen. So Don't be afraid to just grab some things out of the fridge and start slapping them together. When I see quinoa, sometimes I think, green and red. Then we used red quinoa yesterday, which is more of like a deep burgundy. But the pop of, say, a red bell pepper or a really nice tomato or cilantro or fresh basil really stands out in there, and they're really refreshing flavors too. Yeah, I don't know. I think that whenever you go into pulling a meal together, you can't go wrong. Just start to think about how to line everything up where you need your protein, you need the rainbow,
What do you mean by the rainbow?
So we've talked about, so imagine the colors that we're talking about right now. We're talking about a few different reds, a few different greens, some cucumbers in there, something really light. The salmon is grilled. So what salmon is, this bright pink with these char marks on it, and this miso sauce on there is shiny, and it's kind of golden as well. So when you visualize that, you can just see something that makes you pretty happy just by thinking about it.
How important is that visualization with food? I think this is something I've heard Michael talk a lot about, and he takes pride in almost being an artist behind the plates that he's putting out. And these are plates that are healthy, they're nutrient dense. Could you discuss more like how important visualization and how that plate gets prepared is kind of top your list?
Absolutely. And and thanks for asking,
No
because
worries.
it's such a fun part. And I think Rachel, me and you were talking about this a bit yesterday, and that's about the environment, and having the privilege of honoring guests by them sitting down at your table and eating your meal. From the way that it smells, it sounds, it feels, the way that the food looks. And of course, the way that it tastes in the end is when you get up and how you feel and move through the rest of your evening, day, or morning.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are such a privilege to have the opportunity to fuel someone through the rest of their interactions. And so I think of things that I got pretty happy and excited just thinking about that plate again from yesterday. Like that made me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it makes me feel good and I see a lot of these things, I'm pretty saturated with it. Hopefully it'll make someone else feel really, really good. And that they'll feel energized from the proteins and the other micros that are on there as well. So, I think, eat the rainbow, eat the rainbow. I just repeat that into my head and I let the food speak to me. I take anything that I buy and I bring into our kitchens. I take out of it any packaging, any marketing, because I want to see it. I want to see the food and let it kind of jump out at me. I want to see the colors come through and what will match well on the plate. And
he sounds like a painter.
Yeah.
He does. Yeah, he gets into this
cool.
stoic zone, and I mean,
it's incredible.
I really hear him talking a lot about the senses around food.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting where there's this extra level of care behind how you bring food to the guests that you work with.
It's such a privilege and to treat it as such is so important because every guest is different and every guest has a different need. And so just by talking to guests sometimes, I'll learn about something very subtle that I pick up on. And then I can appreciate that back on the plate to them. And it's a little tip of my hat to them without them ever knowing.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So if a guest says, for example, avocado, I just love avocado. I eat it every day.
Who doesn't?
Right? I eat avocado every day and a half for many years.
You know what our dietitian says? She's always like, when in doubt, eat an avocado.
Eat an avocado.
Yeah, that's a good line for all of our listeners to remember.
Avocado is on a desert island with one food.
It's
an avocado.
I completely agree. Yeah,
I might go for coconut.
Coconut? Are you sure?
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of diversity with avocado, and I'm sure that's what Michael's about to get into here.
Yeah, well, so if a guest is, how many ways can I do an avocado? that's what I'll play with that week. So if I've got a guest that I'm going to see multiple times, well, we'll do a standard avocado, but we'll slice it thin and we'll fan it out. We'll make it dramatic. We'll make it really have a presence, but it's just the beginning. It's just kind of the teaser, the warm up. Because then we might grill the avocado, or we'll marinate that avocado, or we'll mash it, and then we might mash it with something like a fresh jalapeno, or we might mash it and mix it with some really nice ripe mango. You never know. So we'll just keep playing it throughout the week, because what happens a lot of time in our routines that I find when I talk to guests is that they kind of not necessarily in a rut, but they are used to the same things. Mm-hmm. I get sliced avocado, and that's kind of it.
Now, why is it so important to maybe switch up? You've given us 6 or 7 different ways of eating avocado. For our listeners and folks maybe trying to eat a healthier way, and for guests in general, why do you think it's so important for them to switch up just how they're getting the presentation of it?
I think that it's important to switch up because doing things that feel good are repeatable actions. Mm-hmm. Because if I felt good from the avocado, for example, just sliced and fanned, then and I know that I love lemon. Well, then I'm going to squeeze some lemon, and I've got this really beautiful olive oil, and I'm going to just squeeze some pour some olive oil and do a little lemon over the top. I've created variety in my life. If I've got some hemp hearts or some toasted seeds, I can put some pumpkin seeds on there, and I'm living large now. And I feel good, so I want to continue to repeat these kind of actions, these kind of meals for myself. They're simple, and that's inspiring for me to cook for myself instead of going out and buying food, from a drive-through or from a restaurant. That's been prepared by others. And I don't necessarily know what's in that, but I know what I make for myself. Mm-hmm. And that's always really important.
So it's almost those small twists make it where you don't get sick of that food. It gives you the variety, and it still gives you that same feeling that you're hearing from most of the folks who may switch up the delivery of that particular food.
Certainly, because I'm going to eat avocado every day.
Yeah. It's a non-negotiable, it sounds like.
But I'm going to eat it many, many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Cool. Michael, I know a lot of guests ask you if you cook the same way at home. Do you?
So I cook similar. I cook for my family, for my children, and my wife. And I definitely do cook at home. I love to cook at home. It's one of, my kids are always asking me, what did I make today? And so I'm always excited to kind of showcase what I do, while I'm away from them. Because they're really open to food, fortunately, because we've always, fed them whatever we're having. And they've always just they didn't know any better. So they just ate everything, which has been really wonderful. We prepare whole foods at home just like we do at Skyterra. We don't use processed foods. We procure and prepare the best that we can find in our area. We go out shopping together. Yeah, so I would say it's very similar. So, sometimes we probably do a few more desserts at the house. But again, we're cooking together, and we're making them homemade, not out of a box. And so it's a really communal environment, with the family to make food, and which it is at Skyterra too, which is really cool. So,
do you have suggestions for people who maybe who don't have the creative artistic brain that you have, or feel like they don't, and want to start cooking more like you do? How would people start? What should they shop for?
What I do, and I sit down with guests regularly, or with folks who are like, okay, I need a meal plan. I need to do all these things. I say, all right, well, hold on. Let's get a clipboard, a piece of paper, and let's write down the days of the week. And let's write down, let's just do an L for lunch and a D for dinner. And now let's go across. So that's 14 different meals. Mm-hmm. Now let's let's look at the proteins that we're going to have. Are we doing chicken, fish, pork, steak? And if so, let's sprinkle them out throughout the week. All right, so we set all those up. We have a few chickens at lunch and dinner, and fish spread out, and maybe a heavier protein here and there. Well, that's done. So that's cool. That was easy. Now all we have to do is figure out our starch. Okay, well, how many times do we feel like having rice, and how many different ways will we have rice this week? Maybe we'll have rice twice. Sure. All right. So we'll have just a standard, like a long grain basmati, something exciting, not a short grain, something a little bit more fun in the mouth. And then maybe our next rice will do like a turmeric rice. So it's got this really beautiful bright yellow. All right, so cool. So we've got 2 rice, and we can do some quinoa, of course. There's some other grains, some wheat berries or some sorghum, whatever. There's just a whole assortment of things to do, more than we could fit into 14 days, or 14 meals. So I find that to be pretty easy, and experimenting as well, especially with grains, because they can sit on the shelf in a clear mason jar. They're not going to go bad immediately, and you can just pick and choose. And so having options at your house are really important that aren't perishable, for example. And then you have your vegetables. What are your favorite vegetables? I don't use celery very often unless it's a really traditional specific need for it. I love other uses, like the ribs of rainbow chard are super beautiful, and like celery, where they're really crunchy and they're really juicy, but they're the rainbow, so they're really colorful too. And when you cut them on a bias, they get a really gorgeous shape, and you can saute them, or of course you can eat them raw. So I eliminate having to have one more thing in my refrigerator plus, of course, you get all the wonderful leafy greens that you can, again, massage, saute, or eat raw. So there's 4 options real quick, just with a chard, for example.
Michael, so you're essentially, I heard quite a few simple steps there, actually. So one, you want to start with a plan. Just start to think about what the lunch and dinners kind of look like. Yeah. Put it on paper. And I think that's a really important step. The second thing you said is identify the proteins that you enjoy, the ones that are going to be probably easiest for you to cook in the beginning. And maybe, what do you think? You're picking a couple of those at first and then rotating. I mean, you're really hitting the variety there, but maybe you're doing 2 or 3 and then you're changing it up the next week, something like that.
Well, and also just keep this in your mind, make a mess, make it count. So if I'm going to do chicken 3 times or 4 times in a week, well, maybe I'm going to grill it all this week. I feel like I'm going to do grilled chicken. So boom, fire up the grill, a little olive oil, and that's it. No other seasoning on the chicken. Nice hot grill, grill it, finish it off 165. It's good. Cool it down as quick as possible. Now for my meal, I would keep 1 piece out. Boom, I would eat it then. And the other 3 pieces I would have for whatever I wanted. I've already cooked it. I can dice it and saute it into some vegetables, put it over rice. I can bring it to work in a lunch. I can put it into a wrap and make some chicken salad. I've already made the mess. I just have to assemble it.
Well, and I think that is a really great example for our listeners where you're utilizing one protein, but then as the week goes on, you're able to repurpose that into 4 different ways. And so it's almost like the same thing you were describing the starches. You're maybe picking just that rice, and then you're doing the same exact thing. And then almost with the vegetable, you're using the example of the chard. And so just being able to, you almost could start with 1 for each and get 4 or 5 days out of it is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah.
Something else that you said, Michael, that I really liked was that you are looking for protein, you're looking for vegetables that you enjoy eating. Because that's really important, right? And I've heard you say it before, but just the joy of eating.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is really important, that I enjoy eating, not that someone told me that I should enjoy to eat. And I think that, if steak was, for example, my favorite food, I probably shouldn't eat steak every single night, even though, or in for lunch, even though that might be my favorite thing. I'm going to be mindful that moderation is everything. That whenever it's steak night at my house, that my lunch that day might be a little bit lighter because I know I'm going to go a little bit harder at dinner. And so I'm trying to keep this balance going. Maybe my breakfast or lunch following that steak dinner would be and would be mindful as well, that I wouldn't I would have really gone hard at dinner on my protein, and maybe I even steak and potatoed. So what am I going to do for breakfast?
A verb. I like that.
And for breakfast, I might do my yogurt, fruit, and granola, and of course a little bit of avocado. So.
And I do want to give a little shout out to skyterra@home.com, which has a lot of Michael's recipes on it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Because I think too, a lot of times people can say, well, I don't like kale. Well, maybe you haven't had it in a recipe that Chef Michael has put together. So I think if there is something that you have decided maybe that you don't like, take a look at skyterra@home.com, search on that food and see if you can find a different way that it's been prepared. Because I have been doing that and it's all great.
Rachel, since you said that, it reminds me, there are some hard sells sometimes with food. A lot of people have had a bad experience with, say, fish or with kale. And they've just, kale, of course, is like one of those big things. Because they've had it steamed and just too much, like maybe the first time, that's great. But every time is not great. And you can become burned down on it. Or you had a fish that was very fishy or dry. And you're like, well, I'm never going to have that fish again. So the recipes really lend to really simple techniques, basic tools from that most kitchens will have, and kind of a reintroduction to some foods that you might have got burnt on before.
I like that word, reintroduction. Is that hyphenated typically? No. Thanks, Rachel.
I'm Jeff's editor.
Yeah, she keeps me in mind.
Thank goodness. Yeah,
but you're right. Like sometimes we don't really know fully what we enjoy if we haven't had multiple preparations of that food. And I think you said it best, like start with what you enjoy. Also think about moderation. And then third, kind of on our checklist here, is stay open. Maybe you just haven't had that food in the way that was right for you.
Yeah. And I think staying open and relaxed makes it pleasurable. And
what do you mean by that, Michael?
Being open and relaxed.
When it comes to food.
Yeah. Throw in red flags up and saying, I've had that and I'm not going to try that again, is shutting you off from future experiences of feeling good or pleasure, or closing the door on possibilities, which makes your choices more narrowed. And then that makes it more limited. And now it's starting to sound a little stressful to me already. I need, and why I love food truly is because it's infinite. I can't think of everything. I can't cook everything. I'll never figure it all out.
And we always have to keep eating.
We have to keep eating.
So there's lots of chances for everybody.
Yeah. And so it becomes very relaxing in that way where, oh, this is so much bigger than I am. All I have to do is cook. Yeah.
That was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Michael, can you talk about, I've heard you say before too, along the lines of experiences and eating experiences, when you serve guests at Skyterra, you wait to make an appearance out of the kitchen, and it's very deliberate and purposeful, and I think it's interesting. Can you share that with our listeners? Yeah,
for sure. And that goes along with treating each guest as an individual, and then the group as a whole. So I listen, and I can see the guests through the kitchen, and I listen to the banter at the table. And
is this before the food has been served?
No, this is after.
Okay.
After everything has been served, I'll wait to go out to make sure that once the last plate hits the table, that in my mind, all of the aspects of the plate have been tried, or definitely seen and tasted, and conceived and thought of in some way, so that when I go out, that there's a group conscience if everyone has had the same type of experience thus far. I think that when I go out there, my biggest question is there any, does anyone need anything? That's the first thing I want to know. And then the second thing I want to know is who has questions on how this was prepared, and that is usually a lot of looks and a lot of hands go up, and the questions start rolling in. What do we have today? We had a soup today, which was a really unique soup. We did a fingerling potato soup, which is different than a standard like a russet or a red potato soup. The texture is a bit different. The flavor's a bit more potatoey, I guess. And they're like, how and why is it like this? And the ingredients of that soup today were, I actually cooked it in chicken stock, fresh chicken stock, fingerling potatoes, and just a little sea salt. And that was the entire recipe. And so if that's not the most simple way to prepare something that makes you feel good, it should be definitely repeatable as well. So,
what do you mean by repeatable?
Repeatable, relatable, approachable. Something that you feel like you could do yourself. Something that you say, hey, I've got a pot. I like potatoes. Either I have a favorite chicken stock, or I feel like making some chicken stock in my crock pot. And so that's repeatable type of recipes that are my favorite to do. That is my probably my biggest pleasure working with a guest, is that they feel like they can take what they've seen on that plate, even if it's just a side or the protein or a soup, and replicate it at home.
Yeah. And especially if you're trying to build new habits around your eating patterns, like it shouldn't be overcomplicated in the beginning. And I think you've nailed on a lot of those points where by figuring out those things you enjoy and just being able to see what you make at Skyterra, and for you to give them that dialogue of this is how I did it. And I think some people are sometimes astonished by how easy certain things are. I know when Michael's explained things to me, or I've even heard him explain them to other team members or guests, that they're really shocked by how hard it actually isn't.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's intentional, on purpose. I think everything with food should be intentional. It should be thoughtful. And that's why keeping it absolutely simple is vital. Keeping the processes, and this is, I use one knife for 99% of everything.
What is that knife?
It's just an 8-inch chef knife. And I've had it for over 15 years. Oh. I do use a serrated knife, but that's just to cut, if I'm going to cut like a soft bread or something, so I don't smash it with my other knife. Otherwise, I do all my other knife work with the one knife. That keeps it really simple. I have a favorite cutting board that when I see it, it makes me smile. It's a really, really beautiful piece of wood that I know that when I put food down on, when I put vegetables on there, that I'm going to cut those up and they're going to turn into these great dishes or fruits, and the guests are going to love it. So
you use that cutting board at Skyterra?
Mm-hmm. I do every day.
Do you share that cutting board in the kitchen, or is it your? And is it your?
No,
knife?
I definitely share it.
Okay.
Yeah, it is the centerpiece of our kitchen. Yeah.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah, it's really kind of a neat part that no one really does know about this, other than me and the other two chefs that are there. And so the cutting boards has a kind of this mystique about it, where that's where kind of this flow of food comes from, this one kind of center point. So when the morning chef comes in, that board is oiled. It is perfectly in its place. There's a brand new clean folded towel beside it. That chef's knife is already set out there by the chef from the night before. So it's very inviting.
You almost set like an environment back there so that not only your chef's prepared, but it's a very intentional way of like almost getting you guys in that flow state, because that's what I see a lot in you, Michael, is like when you're cooking, you're in flow state and you pass that on to your team members. And I think it's really interesting that that stems from like part of the act of putting this cutting board out and using that knife you've had for
the
15
rituals
years.
of it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So that environment that we try to set for the guest when the way it smells, sounds, tastes, all those, the same things go for us too in the back when we're preparing food. So at home, when you're making food, are you wearing comfortable shoes? Are you wearing comfortable clothes? Are you playing music? Do you have a glass of water close? And as you start to roast garlic or make a stock, your house starts to fill these smells, or our kitchen does as well. I keep, actually I have the exact same cutting board at home because I love it so much. And every day I come home, it grabs my eye. And it makes me, I just want to cut things up on it. I want to cook, and that feels good to do that. So it's very repeatable.
Would you recommend that our listeners, or just an individual trying to get back into a rhythm like you're describing, should they create some sort of environment like that at home? Like they've got the shoes. Do you think that's a kind of a no-brainer, like something that should be done?
Absolutely. I think you should have a knife that you love, a cutting board that you love, a pan that you love. And I like to call them sexy tools because they draw you towards them. They call to you, and you want to use them, which keeps you healthy, keeps you at home, and keeps you preparing food for yourself, which you dictate exactly how much or how little of anything is going into there, the salt, the sugar, all of those things. You're doing yourself, and you're in control. And that feels really good, especially when you're done and you feel like you've accomplished something pretty big. So, yeah.
And then for our listeners who maybe have not been to Skyterra, how would you recommend that they, what's the first place to start with? Would it be Skyterra at home? Would it be one recipe? Would it be kind of equipping your kitchen? I mean, we've given a lot of action steps, and I want to make it as easy as possible for people.
Yeah, so I think the easiest thing to do is to take inventory of what you've got. Do I have a knife that I love, or do I just have a knife in a drawer of many knives that are hand-me-downs, or just kind of derelict knives, that I just kind of smash through things?
Folks need a meaningful knife.
You need a meaningful knife, and you need to choose it yourself. It's hard to receive a knife from someone. It's one of those things you need to put into your hands, and it needs to fit your hand. It's an extension, and it's very dangerous too, of course. So you need to feel really comfortable with it, and it's yours. Very important. So
inventory. What's next?
A cutting board.
Okay.
A cutting board, super important. And then.
What about do you have a favorite recipe that you feel like could be accessible for everybody?
A favorite recipe,
probably has avocado.
Yeah, it's
probably does.
It's probably got chocolate and avocado in it.
I heard our executive producer doesn't eat avocado. He's like the only person that doesn't.
Who doesn't eat avocado?
Yeah, it's so awkward.
Okay, I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah, you can't even bring him to parties because you share that and you just lose friends. I'm sorry.
Oh dear. So let's see. Favorite recipe, or good recipe, good starter recipe, would be to cook an easy grain like quinoa, for example. Say take 2 cups of quinoa, 4 cups of water, vegetable stock, chicken stock. Boil it like you would beans, for example, or rice. Bring it up to a boil. Maybe 15 minutes on a lowest setting, and let it set. And while that's happening, you can saute some vegetables, sear a piece of protein, throw it in the oven. And
what does sear mean? Oh,
searing is fantastic. Searing is one of my favorite ways to prepare vegetables or proteins. So searing is to take say a vegetable, or let's say a piece of chicken, and a light amount of fat, like an oil, olive oil, grapeseed oil, avocado oil, a high temperature oil, at a medium-high heat, and you sear the exterior of the vegetable or the chicken, for example. And what that does is that closes up the outside, kind of sears closed any of the openings. So all the yummy juices stay inside. And it also adds color. And brown equals flavor, which is a wonderful thing to remember. Eat the rainbow, brown equals flavor.
What do you mean by that?
Brown is flavor. So when you're searing, you get a bit of caramelization going. And that is a really, really fun way to, instead of steaming or boiling food, when you sear it or grill it, you've added this brown to it. And that is when things become more rich, for sure. Yeah.
What about a dessert?
Well, I touched on it just a little bit, but the chocolate avocado mousse is really epic.
I hear a theme.
Yeah, I actually made some today. You'll have it tomorrow.
And that recipe is on Skyterra at Home.
It is.
It's there.
Is, yeah. It's super simple too. And it's a really gorgeous recipe. I enjoy making it so much. It's super simple. It's equal parts melted chocolate to avocado, a little vanilla. Sometimes I use little coconut milk too, just to make it a little bit softer or a little bit bigger, especially if I'm using a really bitter chocolate or cacao. And I put it into the food processor, and it goes from this ultra beautiful green, and the chocolate just immerses and melts into the avocado, blending it away and doubling the volume, which is epic. And yeah, that's one of my very favorites.
Nice.
As far as desserts go. Thanks, guys.
So I have one last question for you, Michael, and I think it's probably clear, but I've heard you say to guests before that one main ingredient in everything that you create is love. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, yeah. I will say I learned a long time ago that what's going on inside of me comes right through onto the plate. So I need to be centered, and I need to feel very good, and I need to feel like I'm in a loving environment. And I need those that are around me to feel the same way also. And so fortunately, I'm very lucky to experience that on a daily basis. So they say you can feel the love coming through on the plate. And that is when each guest is treated as an individual, and you recognize that some guests have a low sodium need, or some guests want something a little bit spicy, but no one else does. And they appreciate the level of care and attention that you give as an individual. And I think that is very meaningful. So I'll say that's kind of how the love transfers. It is so meaningful to be able to prepare the fuel of people's lives. I think that what you put into your body affects your character a lot, and I feel so privileged to have the honor to provide nourishment for folks.
That's beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah.
We miss anything, Michael? Anything else you want to add for everybody?
I've had a great time. I really enjoyed
talking to you. We loved having you on.
I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah.
This is really fun. I love to hear all these great things about food and share this with everyone. It's a constant that we do. I want to take the fear away from that question, what's for dinner? I feel like it's a dreaded question that we all hear every single day, 7 days a week, for all of our life. What's for dinner? And that should be an exciting question to answer.
And from you, I'm hearing, if I could summarize, the answer is, doesn't have to be complicated. Whole foods, real foods, eat the rainbow.
Yeah. Brown is
and
flavor.
Do it with love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thank you all.
The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness. Special thanks to the non-avocado eating executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Rate and review us. Give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found.
And if you're not going to rate us 5-star, just keep it to yourself.
That's right. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you all.